notification.
There it is.
And there we go. So, welcome to YouTube. I appreciate, I have not used this method of live with a guest on YouTube before. So if you're following my YouTube channel or you're seeing this somewhere else, you know that I've been doing media and video and everything else for a long time, a lot of social media stuff as well. But this is a new opportunity for me to break into utilizing the StreamYard platform to get through YouTube. And it's kind of a special occasion because this gives me an opportunity to share with all of you Mr. Rocky Marshall, who is standing next to me, sitting next to me on the screen here somewhere, depending on your view. And if you aren't aware, Rocky Marshall is one of the 4 reform candidates running for the NRA Board of Directors here in now March of 2024. And if you've been following me, if you're watching my stuff, you know that this has been a big deal for over 5 years now. It's been a very public big deal. But for me, this fight for reform inside the NRA goes back over a decade. For some people, like if you saw my recent conversation with another reform candidate, Jeff Knox, it's literally been a lifelong activity for him, working with his father, and then obviously since his father has passed, working for a strong NRA and being very vocal about the need for improvement and strengthening of the NRA. Rocky Marshall joins us today. He is on the ballot. He's one of 4 candidates. We'll talk about the other ones, I'm sure, as we go on today, who are endorsed by me, by Tom Gresham, Michael Bain, a lot of big names in the firearms community who've been pushing very vocally for reform and change at the top of the NRA, including the Save the Second organization. Rocky has served a brief period on the board. He made it through the nominating process, which sometimes we consider a bit of a black eye, but Rocky will talk to us more about that. He was definitely under the radar, made it through the nominating process, didn't make the cut to get onto the board, but then through resignations and some other changes on the board, he was able to serve an abbreviated term of 10 months. And basically, he'll tell us, but I think confirm a lot of suspicions and rattle some cages and wake some people up towards the need for reform. And now, of course, not getting back onto the board, he's now running again to try to, not staying on the board, he's running now to go in there and really change things. There's been a lot of high profile changes at the NRA, but there is still a great need for change and reform in very substantial ways, more than just the superficial ways of, for example, Wayne LaPierre removing himself from the equation doesn't change the regime and it doesn't change the operation. So with that as an introduction, Rocky, welcome to this conversation. And please let everybody know a little bit about who you are and how you end up here.
Okay. So yeah, Rob, thanks for having me on your channel. I appreciate that. So I'm a business guy, 40 years in industry. I was an executive for a Fortune 150 company for 17 years. And now I own my own business. That's a manufacturing company based in Texas, award-winning company. We ship products nationwide in Canada as well. So my background is really business. I'm also a gun enthusiast. I have a gun range on my ranch that we shoot at, and we love to hunt with my kids. And so I'm a long-term hunter, long-term shooter, and a Second Amendment supporter. And that's kind of my background. And all those things you said are correct. I was elected. I missed the cut in 2021 in January, or in that previous election, and then I was appointed in January of 21, and my term ended in October of that same year, and that was roughly less than a year that I served on the board.
So when you came to throw your hat into the ring, so to speak, how did that come about? What was the motivation, and were you as focused going into that on reform as you were maybe coming out of that experience?
No. So I was recruited. So I know directors that are on the board and actually had been recruited for many years. And I always said no, because I've served on boards. I've been chairman of boards. It's a lot of work. It's a job. And so I really wasn't wanting to take on a job. But once the NRA got in trouble, some of the board members that I know contacted me and said, would you consider running? Because we feel like with your business experience and also experience that I've had on boards, I could be helpful in the problems they're facing. And at that point in time, when they described the problems, I was kind of buying into the idea that this was a witch hunt, that the New York AG, this was really political. That's all it was. There's a lot of smoke here, but there's nothing here. And so I kind of said, okay, I can help. I can easily help, turn this around. And so I did. I got through the nominating committee. They looked at my resume. They thought I was a good candidate. And then I got appointed to the board later. But initially, I really came in with the idea that I need to help the NRA tell their story and get this New York AG lawsuit dismissed. That's where I was going initially.
And let's make no mistake, there is a witch hunt aspect there, but the problem,
Sure.
of course, is
Sure.
it's an opportunity that was created by Wayne LaPierre and a lot of the leadership over the last 20 years, created an opportunity for the NRA to be attacked. And as I've said several times, and I know you I think are on board with the idea that it's unfortunate that this opportunity for change has really been forced by someone who's antithetical to our cause. This is an attack on the Second Amendment through a corrupt and weak leadership at the NRA that wasn't serving the members or the cause's best interest. So many people that follow me and followed the Save the Second process over the last 5-6 years are familiar with Frank Tate. Frank also got onto the board for a short period of time as a very vocal and clear reform candidate and advocate. And he also has a very strong business background. You're familiar with, I'm sure, some of what he's done and what he talked about?
Yeah, Frank. I talk to Frank all the time. I mean, almost every day, for the last couple of years. I know Frank well.
And would you say that some of your business experience and some of your goals in terms of what you think should happen would overlap? For those who are familiar with what he's said and the positions he's taken, what's the overlap there? 90%, 75%?
Yeah, I would say 100%. I mean, Frank and I, we talk about all these issues, and we have ever since I've been on the board. That was 3 years ago. So he and I are very much in alignment in terms of the financial situation, where they're at, how they got here, what do you do to fix it? I mean, the solutions really are really easy. They just have chosen not to do them. And so that's the frustration, is that this can be turned around so quickly, so easily, but you have to do the right things. You can't do the wrong things.
So I think we know just the fiduciary responsibilities, the money management, the not self-serving, all the obvious things, right? In a more specific
interest, embezzlement. I mean,
all that. Let's leave all that stuff outside of the organization. But more specifically, I think that I believe there are some things structurally and procedurally inside of the way the NRA was sort of rebuilt and reformed over a 10 to 20 year period that really protected those people who were doing those things from any kind of accountability or change, starting with the size of the board, for example. What are your thoughts on things like how you would structurally or procedurally want to see change made, in the short term?
Yeah, so the board is 76 members, as you know, Rob, you've talked about this a bunch of times, but it's an unruly body. It's just like a legislative body. I mean, it's impossible to get things done. And really, if you don't want change, that's what you should do. Get a large board. That way nothing happens. There's a lot of argument, and then you just move right along. So that's not an effective oversight. That's not an effective way to run an organization. And I don't know of any organization, charity, otherwise, that have a 76-person board trying to be oversight. It needs to be scaled down. And I don't know what the right number is. I've been on boards that were 21 people. I thought that was unruly. I mean, it's just hard to get 20 people moving in the same direction. 76 people moving in the same direction is impossible, especially when, in this case, you have a core group actually running the board. And that core group is a small group. It's probably less than 20 people. They dictate which way the board's going to go. And as an independent director, you have no voice. It's impossible to be heard and also to, recommend changes and all those kind of things. So the board needs to be scaled back, significantly to something that's manageable. I mean, you can have outside committees if you want to bring in high profile people, just for name recognition or support. There's a lot of ways you can do things to have support. But in terms of oversight and management direction, that needs to be scaled back to something that's manageable. This is not manageable.
Yeah, I think, my position has been, since I've really known and understood what's going on, I think at any significant level, getting back 10, 15 years ago, that most people serving on the board during this iteration of what the NRA board has become were sort of seeing their board position as a means to an end for them to continue other works they were doing, maybe to even have been rewarded for work that they had done in the Second Amendment cause. And some of these people, including people that I'm not supporting on the ballot this year, are good friends of mine who have done incredible work in their own ways off the board, but that I don't really think look at the board as a job. as you say, as
Right.
the management and oversight of the organization. So there are plenty of ways. Put people on committees. You can have other positions that can be held, other ways to reward people for the work they've done, to acknowledge them, and to empower them as a strong organization. But the people really running it need to be clearly identifiable. And honestly, I think for most NRA members, a board member is a board member, and they don't realize that there's really been about 10% of the people running the show under the cover of names they know and people they trust.
Correct. That's exactly right. And with the other problem too is there's a lot of board members that are not qualified to be on the board.
Sure.
They're friends of friends kind of thing.
Right.
And they can't read a financial statement. They don't know what it says. Even when you're trying to explain these complicated financial issues, they don't know. They have no idea. They've not been in business. They don't know what a balance sheet is from an income statement. So that's frustrating, because when you think there's an obvious problem and they can't see it, that's a problem. They're just not qualified.
And it's not, and I don't want that to be characterized as an attack. It's just that wasn't the way the board has been set up. I think of somebody like Ted Nugent, friend of mine, served on the board for a long time, but he always saw the job that he was assigned as a board member as rallying the troops, keeping people excited, helping generate donations, doing all the things that Ted Nugent does. And he said clearly, before he finally did decide that he needed to resign and just get away from it, he said several times, "Hey, I'm not here to be a banker. I'm not here to run the business. I'm doing some other stuff." And it took a long time. And I've had many conversations with, I know other people have, for him to the light bulb to go off and say, "Oh, that's not what a board member does. That's something else. It's an important role. The ambassador role is important, but it's not the board member role." So your background sets you up to be a very effective board member, business experience, I'm sure on other boards, as you said. What would your thought be in terms of the size of the board? We agree should be smaller. What about term limits and then finding other ways for people to serve after some number of terms on the board?
Yeah, there probably should be term limits. Let me tell you that with a caveat. The boards that I've served on, you didn't really want to serve for a long time because it's real work. It's not a party, the last board I served on, where I was the chairman of the board, it was 5 years. I feel like it shortened my lifespan because there's so much work involved, so the idea that you would be on a board for 20 years or 30 or whatever is ridiculous. I mean, if it's just a party, then you're not doing the job. You're not doing the work. But if that's a way to kind of keep fresh people coming in and new ideas, maybe term limits would be a good idea. Just to come in, do the work, do the oversight, and then get out and go do something else. So that's probably a good idea. Some board under 20 people, I think, would be better. 20 seems to be a good number because you're always going to be missing some. I mean, every time you have a board meeting. So if you had net 15 people at a board meeting, you can still get a lot done. You have good representation. 50 people's too many, 40 people's too many, that's crazy. I mean, there's too many people to try to contact and communicate with. But again, you could have advisory committees. You could have all kinds of things to bring input. If people really felt like this is their organization, they want to contribute, that's great. We can do that. But a board of director is a specific job. It's not what Ted was thinking, where you're just waving a flag. No, that's not it. There's true oversight. And unfortunately, in the NRA's case, there was not oversight. That's not what they had.
By design, in my opinion, from the people that we know have been the problem. So I think we're in agreement there. Has been very clear as far as supporting all four candidates. Let's talk a little bit. Dennis Fusaro came on and talked with me and for the audience. And I know that these videos are being shared out through a lot of different opportunities we have through social media, blogs, and personal links, emails, different ways. So people have gotten a chance to meet Dennis. Dennis, I think, is probably the name that the least number of people know who've been following the movement, because he's been so behind the scenes, but very involved in the gun rights movement for almost 40 years. And then, of course, Philip Journey. Phil Journey was on the board and very clearly and loudly was working against the current regime. He's another one that sort of snuck under the radar because of his prior affiliation with the board and prior affiliation with a lot of people, and then got there and became very loud advocate for reform. And then Jeff Knox, of course, and Jeff Knox, everybody knows, as I said earlier, for those who don't know, his dad, Neil Knox, was involved in the 1977 revolution inside the NRA. And what I always consider, there was a 97 revolution too. And it was during that era in the mid 90s when Neil was sort of pushed out of the way for the current regime, or the now hopefully moving past the regime that's been running it for a while. And Jeff's been very, very vocal and very, very involved in reform and pushing for a strong NRA. Talk to us about how important it is from your point of view to support all four reform candidates as a block, and maybe specifically talk about bullet voting.
Yeah, so on the ballot this time, you have Dennis Fusaro, Jeff Knox, Judge Journey, myself, and also Buzz Mills is on the ballot. Buzz is, he's a critical member of the board and also a strong supporter of us. So if you bullet vote for those 5 people, then that strengthens the vote. If you vote for 25 people, that weakens the vote. So we're trying to get elected because we will be a voice for change. We're not going to go on the board just to sit there and do nothing. I mean, if you look at anything that any of us have written, I mean, I've been writing, constant emails and press releases for the last 3 years, really trying to put a light on the problem here. We're going to be very vocal on the board. The board members that are there now, excluding Buzz Mills, are pretty silent. I mean, recently you see a few things come out. I think, if you look at a couple of board members, they released some emails recently. And my thought on all that was, where were you when we were fighting
absolutely.
this fight? Why now suddenly you're upset? I mean, we needed your help, in 2020, 2021, 2022. We needed help back then. Now you're suddenly realizing there's some problems with the NRA. Where have you been? So
yeah, and I think some very good people again, but people that weren't strong enough, motivated enough, comfortable enough, confident enough to do what they needed to do then. And I think that time, that opportunity is past if they're still on the board. Buzz, there's an asterisk there. Certainly, I think for a long time, he wasn't speaking up. He has certainly started speaking up and been very vocal, but he's also been very clear that, his name is very well known as the owner of Gunsight and being involved in the community and the board for so long. He's probably not going to have any trouble getting back on the board. And that's why it's so important. If you're just coming to this and you haven't voted for a while, but you have the right to vote, you're a life member or higher, or you've been a regular member, annual member for 5 consecutive years, and you have an opportunity to vote. Maybe you've turned your back on the NRA and you're thinking, wait, Wayne's out of the way, maybe I'll come back in. That's why we're saying, yeah, Buzz is going to make it. These 4 guys need your support as names that aren't household names and haven't served for a long time on the board. It's really important that we as a reform community show clear support for you guys. And I also think there's some value in understanding that the 4 of you with Buzz, and I think honestly a few other people would gain confidence from a larger block of reformists being vocal, but starting with a block of 4 is way better than having you yourself on there as an individual or Frank on there as an individual, where really it's very hard not only to get anything done even as 4 people, but with 4 voices, it's going to be easier to recruit other allies, I think, to the reform fight.
Right. And that's what we need to do. I mean, we need to have a consistent group of board director members doing the right things, and not doing the wrong things. And we just haven't had that. I mean, when I served with Judge Phil Journey in 2021, and really back then we had just a couple. It was Judge, myself, Buzz, and Bart Skelton. And that was it. That's the only people we had. And every vote that we had, every motion we made, we only had 4 votes, and we always lost every step of the way because we didn't have any support, and we could not gain support because the board was captive. It was not going to change. And so even though it was weird about all that, I had board members that would call me at home. We would talk about these problems, and then we go to the board meeting and they vote with the problem. And it's the damnedest thing I've ever seen. But yes, if we yeah, go ahead.
Good.
No,
I was going to say I had a lot of those frustrating conversations as well during that 2020 to 22 era. And again, a lot of people were protecting their opportunities to do other things outside the board that they felt like they could accomplish better as board members. But that's not the job. That's not the role. We need more people in there who see it as you do. Any last thoughts? We'll put a cap on this and share it. And then obviously any other service I can be to you or the other reformists, you'll let me and the audience know. What's the final message?
Okay. The final message is this is an uphill fight. I mean, we've got a lot of work to do. We're actually relying on the court to do a few things, correctly, in terms of trying to restructure some of this. So we're hoping that the court will act quickly on the second phase of the trial. We talk every day. So the 4 of us talk every day, including Buzz. We talk about the problems that we see, how we're going to address them, and how can we turn this thing around. The NRA can be saved. but we're in a dangerous spot. We're really in a dangerous spot. I haven't seen the financials since the end of 2022. So I'm curious to see what that looks like, but we need your support. If you're concerned about the NRA, you want to save this, please vote for us. Vote for us, and I promise you, we will not be silent. Just like we haven't been all those years. So.
Yeah, definitely some known entities going into it in terms of willingness to stand up to the problems that exist. So thank you for that work you've already done, for the work that I know you're going to continue to do, whether you get on the board or not. But I'd love to see you on the board with this whole group, working with Buzz and some of the other people that I think will sort of come out of the woodwork as supporting the movement once we get a little tide rolling.
I think so too. Rob, thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity.
Yes, sir. Thank you.